Everyone knows Sonic the Hedgehog, whether it's from his hit blockbuster movies, his face being plastered on anything from toasters to shower curtains, and of course his video game franchise. That little blue rat has been getting non-stop attention since the 90s, excluding that short period of time in the 2010s, but in the process leaving his friends in the dust. Arguably, SEGA has been remedying this a little bit recently with the Year of Shadow, giving the Black Hog himself more attention than he's gotten in over a decade, and even with Sonic Movie 2, Knuckles was the front leading man as Sonic's rival. But you know who's been getting the blunt end of the stick basically since his carnation? Miles Tails per hour. Little dude has been disrespected for years, from being bullied in his village as a kid for having two tails. I'm holding up two fingers, you just can't see it. Barely getting 16 minutes of screen time in his debut film, and Chaos making him look like an absolute chump in Sonic Forces. Kid just can't catch a break, but SEGA at least tried to give him one back in the 90s. Tails actually had his own game, promptly called Tails Adventure on the Game Gear. 2 to be more accurate, but let's not talk about that one. The story's as basic as it gets. A group called the Cuckoo Army are attacking Coco Island, and Tails goes on an adventure to save it. It's about as paint by the numbers as you can get, really. What makes this game really stand out from other Sonic games, well, besides Tails being the main character, of course, it's not a breakneck speed fest, but rather a slow, almost physics-based puzzle platformer that requires Tails to explore the environment to find the best path to get him from one level to the next. The game actually takes place before Tails ever even met Sonic, so I guess that's their way of explaining why Tails moves so slowly in this game. Since Tails can't go fast to save the island, he's equipped with nothing but 2 tails, some bombs, and the gadgets he finds along the way. Each gadget he finds helps him progress through levels or helps him backtrack to a previous stage to even find more gadgets. Very Metroidvania-like in that sense. There's even a good bit of variety in the gadgets he comes across too. Some of my favorites being the Knuckles Fist, which breaks the game's canon story already timeline-wise, that lets you punch enemies in breakable blocks, and the RC robot, which lets Tails control a little robot of himself that can maneuver through tight areas he can't fit through. His main weapons are the bombs though. For such a simple item, they're a lot of fun to use, since they play off the momentum of Tails whether he's standing, flying, crouching, or jumping. It'll matter on how the bombs will toss, and it's really satisfying to nail an enemy with such precision. You'd think since Tails can fly, platforming would be sort of pointless, but no, this game handles that really well, limiting his flying to tight spaces, dodging obstacles and enemies, or making him unable to fly in certain areas, which makes the platforming feel more rewarding, and so things aren't too challenging. He even has a cute little clamber he can do to get on platforms that he just barely misses. Something funny I noticed while in the sewer stages was this is the only game that I'm aware of. Tails can't actually swim. Since the first game he's appeared in, he's always been able to help Sonic get out of some tough underwater situations by being able to swim upward, and Sonic grabbing on. At first, I thought it was kind of stupid they didn't let him swim in his own game, but then I came up with this sort of goofy headcanon that I think really works as to why. Tails just didn't know how to swim before they met, but once him and Sonic became friends, and Tails found out Sonic didn't know how to swim, he figured he should, so that way he can help Sonic in a way that Sonic himself can't. He's just being a good younger brother, basically. Only real complaints I have about this game are the occasional inconsistent enemy collisions and the crappy password system it uses. Like, look at this thing and tell me as a kid this isn't a little intimidating. This is horrifying as a child. Though the password system isn't that fair to complain about since it was more due to the hardware limitations at the time. All I'll say is that just be prepared to write down an absurdly long password every time you're playing so you don't lose your progress. Also, there's the annoying aspect of the movable springs and rocks respawning once you leave them out of sight. Initially, I thought that was a good thing because it's a good way to prevent you from soft-locking yourself where you'd have to restart the stage over. But it gets annoying when you have to keep repeatedly pulling your little robot out to push a spring or rock back to you multiple times because you keep taking the wrong path or fall down a hole. At first, it's not a big deal, but if you gotta keep pulling that little robot out over and over and over again, it gets real repetitive, real fast, when you gotta do it a lot, because it's so slow. Speaking of that little robot, it can actually do a lot more than just grab and push items. It can also turn into a whole submarine, which Tails has to use to get to different parts of the island. It basically turns the game into a clunky shoot-'em-up. It's not particularly fun, but it's a cool concept. And I just know as a kid, I would have thought it was great, just because it was something I hadn't seen before in a Sonic game. The submarine is actually upgradable as well. You can find anti-air missiles, giant torpedoes, or even a shocking ability that's basically a kill screen that wipes every enemy off the screen. Bosses excluded, of course. The submarine sections aren't my favorite, but they do add some variety and make the exploration in the forest feel more rewarding. There's a lot more to the game I could talk about, but I don't want to dive too deep and spoil it for those who might be interested in checking it out. For the Fox's first standalone adventure, it seems no one remembers it, and it deserves far better than that. It's not some hidden 10 out of 10 masterpiece, but it's definitely a fun game that shouldn't have been put to the wayside forgotten. Thankfully, SEGA has recently made the game a lot easier to access, so you don't have to go hunting for a Game Gear and the cartridge to play. If you got Sonic Origins Plus hidden in the extras menu, you can actually play the Game Gear original. While sadly you can't get it on its own, there's at least some official way to play it still. Do you have a favorite video game side character that has their own spin-off but no one seems to talk about it? I'd love to hear about some more down below in the comments. Let me know what your favorite part about those games were, or if you think you'll ever check out Tails' Adventure.